Hi, I'm Allison Carlson, founder and president of Forsythia Foundation, which works in the United States to reduce disease risks by reducing preventable environmental contributors, so toxic chemicals and pollution that are associated with things like neurodevelopmental disorders, reproductive system, immune system dysfunction, cancer, asthma, diabetes, diseases of aging, and the like. I'm also an investor in SaferMade, which is a new venture fund that invests in companies and technologies to reduce or remove the use of harmful chemicals and create products that are safer for people in the natural environment. We're concerned particularly about toxic exposures in the womb and early childhood because they can disrupt development and essentially program people for disease later in life. And to protect human health, we have to protect ecosystems, as well as live, work, learn, and play environments. So the toxics field is really part and parcel of other fields like clean air and water, sustainable ag and food, waste and energy reduction, education, early childhood, sustainable packaging, as well as medicine and health policy. We view the field of environmental health as an under-recognized value investment proposition because it really boils down to the far vaster efficiencies of disease prevention versus treatment. Now, treatment's great, but in the United States, at best, only 2 to 4 cents invested in understanding disease is put toward prevention. Now, to me, that's nuts, because we all know the huge proportion of our GDP and deficit that healthcare costs represent, right? So Forsythia Foundation works to increase investments in prevention, and you can check out our logic at www.forsythiafdn, like foundation.org. I've actually originated 2 environmental health foundations since 2008, Passport Foundation and now Forsythia. And we've done a good job with problem definition and awareness and knowledge building, also with advocacy. We've supported scientific investigation and leading in sort of actors who translate that science for decision makers in public policy and medicine. But I began not being able to sleep well at night because of an unintended consequence that we call regrettable substitutions. You see, in the United States, unlike pharmaceuticals, there's no FDA for chemicals, so there have been very few requirements for testing of chemicals ahead of market. So it's been a kind of crazy Wild West crapshoot where health and safety are concerned. And so while our grantees were succeeding in creating bans and restrictions on bad actor chemicals, it turns out that those bad actors were being replaced by substitutions that were either just as untested or just as bad. A good example is baby bottles. So many are now marketed these days as bisphenol A or BPA free, but it turns out that the BPA is replaced by something called bisphenol S, which disrupts cell signaling just as much as BPA. So essentially, we could be creating false confidence and not actually reducing hazardous exposures. So I've come to believe that it's actually not conscionable to continue the grant funding that we do unless we're also investing significant resources in scaling the invention and commercialization of safe alternatives. In other words, the outcome of efforts to promote awareness and fix regulatory systems simply won't amount to much unless there's a strong pipeline of actually safer stuff. So at Forsythia, we've become a tool-agnostic, solutions-oriented investor, aligning corpus with grant making, and we did a multi-year exploration of how innovation and commercialization in green chemistry happens and how money flows to it. And this is what's behind SaferMade, the new venture fund, because people's concern about chemical risks has translated into multi-billion-dollar demand for safer supply chains and products. Safer solutions already exist, but attention and capital from the investment community just hasn't been that prescient. It's still scarce. And that's mostly because the complexities of what we call safer by design chemistry are hard to grasp from the outside. But the market numbers and M&A figures are impressive, and so SaferMade's managing partners are moving right into this significant return opportunity, and they're working with companies like Patagonia, Nike, and Levi's, Seventh Generation, Method, Steelcase, and Beauty Counter, and others, to identify and commercialize the safer solutions that these companies sorely need and seek. They've reviewed over 100 startups across sectors, including textiles and apparel, electronics, food systems, the built environment, and what we call formulated products. So to me, as anchor investor, as we approach a first close, SaferMade is like the very definition of value. Imagine if just 10% of the staggering costs and suffering of cancer or diabetes or lead in kids' brains in places like Flint, Michigan were prevented. So this venture represents a cutting-edge way to leverage philanthropy in environmental and children's health, and in education and biodiversity and care for the natural world. It's a financial returns play for sure, but it's a really needed new front in the health protection space. So if this strategy resonates at all with you, please let SaferMade know. They're at www.safermade.net. And I just want to close by saying how grateful I am to Confluence Philanthropy for the way they introduced me to the fundamentals of integrated investing, and how they act as a sounding board and a connector, and the way in which they continue to set the table for learning and collaboration and sort of creative entrepreneurship toward total portfolio activation. So thank you, Confluence, and thanks for listening.